Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mohammed. I will be your moderator for today's session, which is called From Research to Market Reality, Making AI Create. And I want to be honest about that title. There is a graveyard of brilliant research that never come to today. Research can... Is it working? Research can have 200 citations and 0 customers, and the startup 0 citations, and if they're lucky, can get some customers. And today's panel is about that second number. And today I am joined by Matteo and Selim. Selim is a data scientist from EPFL. He did research in EPFL and MIT. He later went to co-found Dent AI. They are tackling what's apparently the hardest skill in dental treatment, which is sequencing. They trained an AI on thousands of expert-validated sequences, and they've also built a media presence, followed by nearly 20,000 followers. So they just have the product, but also the audience. Matteo, on the other hand, co-founded Windlens, which is an EPFL spin-off. His background is in machine learning for weather. He did, just like Selim, research in EPFL and MIT. And he quickly realized that the real problem was not more accurate forecasts. It was turning forecast uncertainty into financial risk for the people selling wind energy. Currently, they are deployed with major European operators like BKV and wind energy trading. For full disclosure, I know both Selim and Matteo, and I know exactly the kind of question they don't want me to ask, and so don't worry, we'll get to those later on. But before we start, I would like, just with a quick show of hands, I would like to know a bit about the audience with us. Who amongst you in the audience has at some point done some research in academia or master thesis? Thank you. Okay, I see some hands. And who, from those that done some research, have decided to turn it at some point into a product or a startup or a company? Okay, see? We only have one hand. And actually this panel is up exactly this, the gap between research going into product. Without further ado, I would like to start with Matteo. Matteo, tell me more about the research that you were doing at MIT.
Yeah, thanks, Simo. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. So basically at MIT, it's pretty annoying. I was researching in localized wind forecasting. Did some research there for a year. And then towards the end of it, last year, I wanted to do more research, but to have it more applied. So I took the main essence, which was machine learning for wind forecasting, and tried to apply it more to the wind energy sector to start with, and now more to the renewable sector, but we can come to that later.
Thank you. Selim, how are you doing?
I'm good, Simo, I'm good.
So you both were at MIT, you both did as well research. It was a different kind of research that you were involved in. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, the difference between me and Matteo, so Matteo did research that exactly became the product that he went in because he was in the wind industry and he continued in that. I took a different route because now I apply AI for dentistry, so that was definitely not my research study. Which is very interesting because the main thing that happened is the technology I worked on during my master thesis, during my research, was exactly the same I'm using right now for our product, but totally different field. And I feel that's the interesting thing we can talk more about is how sometimes you work on a technology, on a research thing that does not apply at all to a field that can translate into a product one day, but just seeing how it could be applied somewhere else can make the whole difference.
I would like to jump on this quickly because you've mentioned there are some different kinds of research. There is the applied one, but there is also more the theoretical one. Do you believe that there is a certain kind of research that would help you get into the startup world much easier? And could you also delve into the different types of the research that you dealt with or you know of?
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's the main point. There's research and research. During EPFL and MIT, I had opportunities to do different kind of research. My first project was a causal inference for detection of causality in trajectory prediction. It was very fun and all, but to go from that to product would have been a very big jump. And and that's the thing we discuss a lot with friends that are in research too. It's depending on the field that you are in and the kind of research that you do. Some things are just very hard to make a product out of, and that's just the essence of whatever you work on. So. So, in this subject where we talk about research to product, I feel a very important thing to consider is what type of research you've done. Uh, so, I've been lucky that the next projects I've done all been in labs at EPFL and MIT, super applied. So the project was always linked to an industry. So that's what allowed us to make it a product. But definitely, I have friends in neurosciences and stuff. To make the jump from the research to product is either years of development or you have to be very lucky coming at a very specific point.
Yeah, to jump on that, yeah, I totally agree that it needs to be a research that is quite applied to like a realistic problem, and then of course you can change how you use it or on which subject you actually use it. I think from the work I've been doing at MIT and EPFL and then starting Winlands, what was different is like the way the research or the research that you're actually trying to develop in a research institute is not actually what the industry really cares about. It's solving another problem, so you actually need to take part of it to really have it more applied to what the industry will need.
This is very interesting what you're just saying now. And of course, in research, in some cases, you are doing the research for the sole of research and to get the paper out. For you, Matteo, what was the trigger that made you say at some point, this cannot just be a paper, I would like to go from that paper into a product?
Yeah, I think for me, I really enjoyed the research part, really trying to develop new thing to solve a problem. But I think what I was missing was really the industry contact. We are really focusing based on other papers and developing the best model or the best architecture to really show some accuracy gains. And I feel like I was missing, is that actually helpful for the industry? What are they actually doing? What is the benchmark for the industry? So even if we are working with some companies at MIT, it was still pretty far from it. And actually starting to really have pilots with industry, we realized that the technology we were developing at MIT was, helping to solve the problem, but not how we were expecting it. And I think that's interesting because it's just like when you're in contact with the industry, when you know what they're doing, you kind of change.
And I'd like to jump on that, and I think that's a very important thing, and especially for people who are not very interested by research at the first place. Just having something that's more applicable is, I feel, a very nice way to make research enjoyable because, and I found myself in that position, I have friends too, that you do research on something that's not very applicable and you just start aiming for metrics that you don't even really know what it means for you besides the metrics, because you try to get to a certain kind of accuracy or like a plot that you try to aim for. And I feel that unless you're very passionate on that subject, it's very hard to keep the motivation on working on it. Whereas when it's something super applied, you feel more if this works, I know what it looks like, and then I know how it could be applied to a specific field, and that kind of research is like
was that your experience with Dent AI? So the research that you were doing back in MIT or EPFL, you weren't very much inspired but what you were doing, but yet you went into a different field.
Exactly. And I had the first project it was like super research oriented, and at first you're just very excited because you learn new stuff, and then eventually you go, I don't even know why I'm searching for that metric or that goal that I have in mind. And and some people are, and I feel like if you don't like research that way, you should not conclude that you don't like research. You should just, okay, how about if I change a bit my scope of what I'm trying to look for, and see if I can have a different mode of that research to say, okay, this can become something, and for people who are not very, very into research, that just can make the whole thing better.
I see. Matteo, we studied at EPFL, and as we know, there is a brilliant and a very vibrant ecosystem of research going at EPFL. You had the chance to do it at EPFL. You had the chance also to go at MIT. What was the most striking differences that you've encountered in the way the Swiss system, how they do research versus the American one?
Yeah, I think the main difference is that at MIT, all the lab, I think, are funded by private companies almost. Like the professor really need to find for their own funding. Maybe they have some small budget, but it's not the same in EPFL or in Switzerland in general. And okay, that's good to not be linked to a company, because you can actually develop things that you really care about and not like being with a company that tells you what to do. But also come with a problem that maybe sometimes it's a bit far from what the industry actually needs, and yeah, maybe more focusing on the models, or like on the good metrics, as Salim was saying in EPFL, and less on that being more applied at MIT.
Oh, so you feel it was more applied at MIT
Yeah,
rather than...
closer to industry, and because they are the one funding the project.
Was that like your switch from EPFL to MIT? Like, was some kind of trigger to say you were into the startup ecosystem perhaps over there, that you saw how fast it is going, and you said this is the time to go for it?
I think, to be honest, I was more in the startup landscape. I was more interested by startups before than being interested by research. And then, like, starting doing more research, I actually enjoy more and more the research part and less the business side of the startup, I would say. And yeah, I think so. It was a part, and just doing more research, and then still having this part of startup inside me was to bridge the two worlds.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Salim, get back to you. Was that at some point, obviously, when you do research at EPFL, with the brilliant professors that we get to know, that we supervised by, were you inspired at some point to go do a PhD rather than go for a startup, or for you it was like a destined path?
Well, that's more personal. That's not something that I was really aiming for, because my goal was really to end up in more entrepreneurial route. But I would say something. If I had a more interest into a specific field that required research in more developed way, if you want to become a product one day, I would have definitely considered a PhD.
And to jump on that, I think in Switzerland it's good with the grants that there is when you're coming from a university or like just a school in general. You can apply to grants if you're having an idea to continue a research project.
That was your experience?
Yeah,
right?
And I think that's really good, because you can have this research part and still really focusing on the industry. So really trying to develop the research. Of course, it needs to be more applied, because you cannot develop like in like 1 year the new LLM, or I don't know, but it's good.
You do have, like, you feel the backup of the ecosystem that is behind you.
Yeah.
And the supervision that you can get.
And the possibility as well to do research and to do startup work, let's say. So more connected to industry.
But would you say is it more researchy or startup vibe?
I think it's like, to really understand the pain, it's more startup wise, but you know that you have the capacity and the ecosystem behind to do something that is really cutting edge in terms of research, and that can bring then a value. You don't have the stress, I don't know, to have raised fund already, and you need to get revenue in, and so it's good. You have the time. You need to understand the problem. I think we're going to come to that, but then you know that you can develop the research part.
Yeah, and I feel like for your specific case, you're working obviously on a very innovative field, which is machine learning for forecasting. And in your specific case, you're working in energy forecasting and wind energy forecasting. So was research, doing the research into getting the better models very helpful in your case?
No, actually, that was not the case. We started with better wind forecasting, wind energy forecasting, but now we switched completely by talking with a lot of people of industry, and that's actually what it comes back to. It is like you need to exchange with the people to understand what the industry is doing and what the real problem are. And I think what is really important now is in my field specifically, they need to understand what the model is doing and why it's doing it. Precision without explainability on when it's wrong and why it's wrong and what's the impact of it doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's why now we're really not focusing on the forecasting, actually. We need to understand how the forecasts work, but we're really focusing on understanding the risk based on the forecast uncertainty. Because that's what matters, is the financial risk at the end. The people that were using the forecast, they're really interested in the financial risk.
At the end, you weren't focusing more on the model, but like you jumped into the customer acquisition part mostly.
Yeah,
but,
customer
but walk
understanding.
me through, and I'll give this question to Selim perhaps. I would like to know, what was your first prototype? How did it look like, and how did it evolve from the first stages until now?
Well, I think the most interesting part around that is, once again, I come back to the metrics and kind of the difference between research and when you come with a product. The goal changes, and what I mean by that is the truth changed. When I was doing research, everything was about the metrics, that you have some metrics, some plot that you're trying to come up with, and that's the goal and that's the truth. If you come with a lower number that you had before or higher, that's how you win. The big difference that happened when you now try to come up with a prototype and have to sell a product is the metric for truth just changes. It just becomes the people and the users, and use like as long as they use it and want to use it and want to buy it, that's the new truth. And it's not about like the metrics anymore. And that's what Matteo just told us. Like sometimes they don't really care as much as you thought about. Okay, having like this 1% better
Accuracy or
anything. But it's okay. Is it useful to me? How to make it useful? And the shift between this and this was like I would say is the biggest challenge, also the most interesting one, because that's what makes everything. And in sometimes a product, it's kind of obvious. It's the same thing. Like if you get a better accuracy on something, that's what make it more useful. But in lots of different cases, when you just try to come up with a model that works well into research and you try to make it used by the people, it's like, do people use it?
Actually, this is a very good point that I would like to deepen it even further. You just mentioned that there is some models that work into research, but they can break into production. Was that the case for you, Matteo?
Yeah, actually, maybe not that. I mean, part of it, because it's like the nice model that is actually harder to train. You need more data, so it's harder to get a result. But I think it's also, you don't really know what the industry is doing, and the most simple models that are more reliable are already reaching out like a good accuracy, like almost like the same accuracy. So yeah, of course it's possible to have the great models and to really fine-tune them so they work a bit better, but the improvement will be just incremental. And the effort is actually not scalable because like you need so much work on each specific location for my case to fine tune for each specific cases that you can't really scale it like the fancy model.
Is there an experience you share as well, Selim? Using the AI model that you train, obviously you would need the data, you would need the model itself. Did you find the models, they could be open source, or was that like a personal effort to create everything from scratch?
Well, our product is really around AI and LLMs. So the big challenge was not really about trying to make a better model. It's like, how do you build around models of very big companies that works very well. And I think that there's also a big search part of research around that. That's what I worked on during my thesis, is how do you make a model useful for a certain case, and how do you build around it. And I feel that was most of the challenge. Like, how do you I kind of see it like a car. Like, they have the motor, and how do you build around that car, allow that motor just to make the potential of that motor as good as possible. So that was really the challenge. Like, how do you build around something that works very well to make it even better and useful?
I would like to also move, like, so we were talking about research, how did it inspire you to go into start your startup? I would like to see, now that you've co-founded the startup, you're in the phase of getting customers, was that a certain point that you had a customer that had an assumption or a challenge that challenged your research assumption or the prototype that you were building?
I can go. Yeah, and that was and that was actually funny to leave, because once again, when you're into research, just trying to make something more complex. That's more general ideas. Like, you're trying to come up with a more complex model because you have the assumption that if you make it work, it's gonna make things better. When you come to the product, people don't really care about how complex it is or how good it is. So there's also a bit of that in terms of. I've been trying to make the thing that works, and like that's super smart thought in terms of how you use the model and all. And at the end, and you show it to consumer, and he would go, "Oh, well, I don't know how to use this," or it would be nice if there was a button here that does all that. And I would say, like, the reflex in research is like, you just try to make things nicer technologically, whereas when you come to user or products, like, how do you make it as easy to use as possible, which is even more complex in how you build it behind the user interface and all. But it's just like a whole different challenge around that.
Yeah, and to jump on that, I think what's nice also is that, yeah, when you're having a complex model or something like that, it's not really what's necessary at the end. Like, it's better to really spot the problem exactly, and then maybe just build like a more simple model, like extract some part of the research that you might have been doing to go nail this exact task. So not trying to replace everything with like complex model, but just like having really specialized little models that are trained to do one specific task. I think that's also.
Yeah, and I would argue what helps is, what do you prefer in the research phase? Is it really about like the technical stuff or the research mindset? Because the reason, if what you like is like the research mindset, meaning you have a goal and you have to find a solution, I feel you still get that excitement every day, making the product work and making it useful for the people, even if it's like less.
But it could quickly get frustrating, isn't it? Because I feel like when I was doing research personally, it was at some point very frustrating, because you weren't getting results. So you were trying to increase the accuracy, the precision, or the recall, something like that. And I feel like it was very, it wasn't quick enough. In startup, it is very quick. Do you feel like that's one of the key differences between the two?
No, I don't think. Well, it's different, but it's, once again, it's the same mindset. It's just like the metrics change, and now you don't look at about the accuracy. You look about the user and the user rate, and like how much they actually use the product and where they fail. So the whole mindset of it is like exactly the same. It's just like where you like how do you define those goals that you have. So I would not say that you lose that if that's interested you in the research, but. You might lose the more scientific part of the process in research, which a lot of people do research because of that. So yeah, that's more of the sacrifice depending on what you liked. Is you kind of come up with, no, I kind of wanted to go a bit deeper in terms of technologically or scientifically, but like now it's like how do I refrain myself to actually go deeper? Because if I go deeper, we lose focus, and now we don't make it more useful. And I feel that that's the most tricky part.
Matteo, actually, I want to get back to the customer phase. How challenging was it for you to get customers? Obviously, I've mentioned some big key players in the energy trading. How was your experience with that?
So I think to get the customer is something else. Like we're doing it now, so it's a bit harder. But like to have the first pilot and actually, yeah, having something that works and to try it out on real data. I think when you're coming from a research institute, you have also some credibility, and you can leverage that to actually try out what you're doing. Um, and people are also in this field interested in trying out new ideas and new things. But again, it's like say it's easy to have a pilot, but then to really make them use what you're doing and understand, like having the perfect product market fit. This is the hard part. That the research then is actually advancing. You can find results, but then you need to transform that into a way that the people can use it. And that really fit into the workflow. So I think this is the hard part. It's not really starting, but it's really
to get
yeah.
into that phase.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that's the first advice everybody gets in startups, like get in front of the customer as fast as possible. And sometimes research gets behind that because it's sometimes separate, especially like whatever people are in life, they're doing PhDs or projects, so they don't really maybe think about how to make about users and all. And I feel like I've been lucky because during my study, I was already talking about AI in dentistry and talking to dentists every day. So even though my research was like so far away from dentistry, like really, but I could say, oh, they kind of complain about the same things, the same thing every time I talk with them. And I feel, oh, wait, yeah, this could be solved with the research I'm doing right now. Even if right now I'm doing that for a time series for 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 cars, and I would suggest if I had to do it again, I would definitely do something similar. In of okay, let's do research that I can enjoy, and even though if it's not really my field, like how do I come up with like the people that eventually could use. Especially if you have a field of interest. For me, was dentistry, and just having this audience. And you talked at the beginning that we focused a lot about building an audience, and I still like very bullish on that, and that's something we do even more. Is like, how do we get as much dentists to follow what we do? Not even just to sell whatever we have to sell, just because you get feedback and you get to talk to everybody as like, and you kind of find, oh, okay, they have this, and sometimes you're lucky, like they all have this problem, and you have the solution, and you just couldn't connect the dot because you just don't know what the problem is. So yeah, I would argue just like trying to find a way to come up with the future users while you're doing the research. I feel like you could gain years just doing that.
You touch upon a very key point here. You've mentioned the fact that when you get into research, even though your current product does not look like the research that you've done, but going through the research phase has given you some strengths, like you want to fix problems, you kind of try to have that mindset of going into the full length. What would you say some other skills that the research has provided you in your current journey?
Well, I would say for me, the biggest thing I learned in research, like doubts the result that you have, and I feel like that's like try to understand why things work, and I feel like this can be translated in every aspect of life, I guess, and also in startups. Because the first time you get like, oh, I have like the best results in the world on that model, and you're just like, oh, actually I forgot to do this thing, and that implies this, and that implies that, and I feel just that mindset of like trying to come up with solution, but also understand why there are solutions. Because once you learn that understanding, it can translate to other stuff, because now you know that this implies this and this implies that. And that was my favorite thing about research, like this part of like trying to figure out why things happen.
Why things happen.
And yeah, to jump on that, I think also what's good into research is that you're going through a lot of downs. Sometimes you have an up, you think you're getting close, then you're having another down. I think this is some close patterns that you're seeing in the startup. Maybe that's also why like PhD are also good like startup founders, because they're having those big lows, and like suddenly you're having a high. Like you just need to keep like resilience to try to understand what can I do differently, what can I do more, and I see a lot of similarity between the two worlds.
Definitely, yeah. There is a point currently, and it's a different topic here. I am engaging with. Oh, sorry. Um, you know, I believe like before I would say the AI bubble, I would love to call it. 5 years ago, perhaps having a PhD was a real mode. Uh, but I feel like nowadays that everything is AI powered, is it still having a PhD? Is it still a differentiator? Does you give you the credibility nowadays with the tool that you can have, with the quickness of, you can code things with Claude. You wouldn't need to have several years of research so that you can start something.
Yeah, I think it's still like really useful, and I don't think it can be replaced by Claude or by anything, because yeah, people also customers sometimes maybe think that okay, I can do it in house and just by talking with Claude and like coding a new models, but like yeah, Claude cannot do everything by itself, and like you still need to have the theory and like understand how the model works, what works the best, and what should be taken for your specific case. So it's true that you having maybe discussing with Claude, we can go to that direction, but there is still like it's easy. Let's say even if Claude is giving you the right tools, like maybe you're missing out how to implement it, or like you trying out, or it doesn't work. That
You
means
don't
that
know what is happening under the
yeah.
hood, basically.
And
Like,
yeah, and actually it can fail at the beginning, but then you change, like you understand in the pipeline or things like that. You fix a few problems, and it actually start to work. So it doesn't work on the first time, and I think that Claude cannot do all the way, and like you need to have some sense of what's happening behind.
And I think the most useful thing, especially now, because of AI and all the tools, things take way less effort to make them to make them work, right? But and I see that because I speak to dentists every day. They don't know much about technology at all, and so the big difference now is by having like a background in the research in the field, you can have a good assessment of on does this thing is hard to do or not. And it's not because it works now that it was hard to make it work. Whereas before, if you have the results, it's like if the result was impressive, most likely the path to go there would be impressive. And like if you have to invest in something or try to see what you should not and should copy and all. Like now it's very hard to have this kind of judgment because if you're not technical on that specific field, it's hard to say, oh no, this is super hard to replicate versus no, this was like just an API call and it was like a nice thing around it. And for the mode part of startups, I think that's very a big deal. Like, and that comes with just any field. Like for us, it would be more engineering, but like just having like more intuition around that field and understanding. Okay, this was actually hard to put it to make it work. So I could invest more time in it. I could go behind this company and whatnot.
and this is very interesting because nowadays, I mean, if you go to a customer, he can easily tell you, well, ChatGPT can do the same.
And also the opposite. Like sometimes you do something that ChatGPT cannot do, and you show people, and they go, oh, AI. So no, not AI, me, and I feel like it goes in both ways.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's super interesting in where you want to put your energy, looking forward and all. Just having this understanding. Okay, if I put 5 years into that, it's gonna be harder to copy. And is that technology AI or is that distribution and having an audience? That's like where we try to come up with where is your threshold depending on what field. But for example, for us in more AI things, like it's really now about the data, not the model anymore,
Yep.
about the audience, not really anything else. So just having this technical sense or just technical for us, but like it could be someone who's been in HR for years and now they know, oh no, this is the limits and factor, and you can use AI as much as you want. It's not going to solve that. So I feel just having that's like super useful.
And and I think it depends really the field because like, it can be about the data and not the model, but it can also be about the model because you understood like the exact task, and it's like not every model can do everything, so it's good like if you're having an understanding exact of the task, then you can like create the perfect model for that, and that you really need to have the understanding of how everything is working to have the both way.
You talked about data. I feel like perhaps data in your case, I would like to jump to Matteo for it. You obviously you do weather forecasting, so you need a lot of data nowadays. How did you manage to get this kind of data, and how open source data helped you to get into your first prototype?
Yeah, so actually in our case, a lot of weather data is actually open source. So that's how we realized that the problem was not like accuracy, but it was something else. Because since everyone is using the same data, everyone is having the same models, more or less, and everyone is making the same mistakes. So the idea is to use this data, and also of course like having the model trained on proprietary data of each asset location, but like using this similar data to actually take a new edge and looking at the problem in another direction, and then developing models that are actually different from what all the others are doing.
Definitely. Yeah, I would like to add something.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say it also changes what you've put your focus on. For example, like for us, what's valuable is the data. If we have the data, we can have the best outcome. Now that we have the data, we have better outcome that people who don't have the data, because this kind of data is very hard to get. But to get this data, it's not about data work, it's more about product, because to get the data, you have to make people use the product and to gather the data. So to get the data, it's really focused about product and distribution. So it's like, it's a funny kind of loop, because you want to build an AI tool that's AI product that works. To make it work, you need the data. To get the data, you need the product, and you need the people. So actually, the main focus, even in the, you try to make the best AI tool, which like looks more like research, kind of you get a better outcome using an AI. But to do that, you have to get the people. So it's like, it's super counterintuitive, but like that's very funny to.
Yeah, and we actually having kind of the same problem, because like same the idea of being localized, having a model that solves a problem, but still you need the data of the client, of the customers, to be able to do that. So
We're almost out of time. I would like to take the last it's 10 minutes to give the audience the chance to ask some questions if you have any. Yeah. Should I?
I think we can hear you. Yeah.
I can hear.
I repeat.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Okay, thanks. I'm very insightful, grateful for this. I'm Zanele from South Africa. So we came here as part of the exchange program between University of Basel and University of South Africa. So what I want to ask is, I'm not a researcher, right? But I'm an entrepreneur. And I've been saying to the group that it's so easy, I think, for researchers to actually commercialize what they've researched. But for us, it's like the market is moving very fast, and the sooner you get it, the better. So I want to understand maybe from you, how do you think the ecosystem can work together with SMEs and researchers, that by the time the paper is ready, we already are ahead either of the curve, because we understand the nature that we are in. For example, maybe the customer segment, I might understand how they are thinking, but maybe with what you're developing or working on, at certain points when you're hitting a pivot and your paper is ready, by the time it's out there, then I can't execute that business. So how can the two come together basically from the start to end to actually track also on the movements of the market by the time the paper is finalized? Thank you.
No, it's interesting. I really see that with my research before. It's like taking so much time to actually have the paper out. It's crazy. And when you see then the industry at what pace is going, like, you feel like it's too late. So I guess maybe it's also a way. I think doing paper is great, but maybe it comes back to like what type of research you're doing. Like for the research I was doing, which was like applied machine learning, I honestly don't think we need like the whole paper review, and like, because it's more like methods. I want a method out. Does it work? Yeah. Is it sound mathematically? Yeah, sure. But it's not like so long to create a paper like that. It's not years of research. So I think maybe it's also a way to change for specific field the way to communicate research results. Maybe more having a blog or something like that to actually just like communicate what you've been doing fast and it's not like perfectly written or I don't know, but you're having the main idea. For other field, no. Like I think like you really need to have the paper because it's like years of research, etc. But for applied machine learning in specific field, I don't think it's really necessary. So maybe other techniques.
Do we have? Thank you so much, Matteo. Thank you for the question. Do you have other questions in the room? Yes.
Hi, can you hear me? So thank you for the talk. I could relate to a lot of things actually. But my question is, so at the end you were talking about this loop of not having enough data, but then you want to show the results to the customer. And that's something that I've also been going through currently. So especially in deep learning models, you need a lot of data, right? So is there a way that you would kind of break that loop somehow?
Yeah, that's definitely case by case, right? Because sometimes lots of data is like 1,000 data points, sometimes a million is like a whole different process. To break that loop, I feel like I can only talk about my experience. Like it's only about having the people that can generate that data, and for me, it was having an audience. So just talk about it online, and especially if you're in a niche, try to build that audience that people just follow you because they kind of trust you on that field. And when you you just try to give as much as you can, as much value as you can to them. And eventually, when you have something to ask, a group of that people will help you because you've been given so much value. And I feel that what worked for us. It was just basically a bit. Just having already the people that can generate the data, and to do so you kind of have to give them something. So it's either money because you pay someone to work on that, was like more just giving to people value and they kind of give it back to you. But that, or finding a way to, without much data, make whatever you do as a product that could be useful, even if it's not the best one, but it could be useful for the people that would produce the data. So they get to start, and now it's like 50% correct, but the more they use it, they get 60, 70. So I would say 2 routes that I lived were very helpful. It's either you make a not perfect product, but useful, that generates data, or you have people that can help you for that.
So not necessarily focusing on generalization as the first.
No,
step.
yeah, because that's the thing right now. Every model is amazing, and it's super hard to make things work better on a generalized sense, because there's like $1 trillion company that make that work. And actually it's also good because okay, they can focus on that. I want to make this work on my specialized problem, and what do I have to get. And it's also nice because you don't need as much data as you don't need as much data I used to before, because those models are so good at generalizing. You only need enough to make it work for your specialized product. So I feel like if you can get the first amount of data that makes it a good product for your use case, then it just become used, and the more the people use, the more they generate, and you can iterate on that. And I feel like the first part, but you'd be surprised on lots of field right now, in AI at least, you don't need as much data as before to make it adapt to your specific problem. But
Yeah. Thank you.
I believe we still have time for one more question. Do we have any more question in the room? If not, Matteo, Selim, thank you so much for the very insightful advices, your insights from your research, from the startup to industries, but you have the same problem that you are tackling, the same background. So thank you again. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you for everybody that
thank you for
listened to
listening.
the end.
Thank you.